Welcome everybody. I guess I got the enviable 6 o'clock on a Monday night time slot. Hopefully the content that I have prepared for you is relevant. It's been interesting as I've watched some of the other speakers, how so much of this is related, right? Whether it's around your own personal brand, building relationships, networking, project management, what have you. These are all skills that are relevant in a lot of situations, especially when it is that when you're trying to find a job. So some of the things I want to talk about today, just a quick overview of myself and my background, talk a little bit about some trends that are happening in talent acquisition and recruiting and just in the marketplace in general. Talk a little bit about job search and interviewing in particular. I think Haley and Taylor let me know that the interview piece might be maybe most relevant here. And then certainly if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So who am I? I don't list this all out here just to kind of go through, my own background as much as I think that it summarizes in a lot of ways, a typical career, right? I left Chico in 2001. I started my career in hotels. There was a significant event, September 11th, that actually really changed the trajectory of the tourism industry at that time. That prompted me to look abroad. I wanted a bit of an adventure and moved overseas or down to South America for a couple of years, which I highly recommend if any of you all have the opportunity to do something like that. Not only is it an amazing experience in the moment, but will only add to your perspective as you go through your career and the relationships that you build and the jobs that you have. In 2005, I was referred to a recruiting company called Aerotech, one of my best friends from Chico. I highlight that because I still think that the number one way is and always will be in finding a job is through personal referrals and networks. It's the best way to go, always, bar none. From 2007, 2019, I managed a significant amount of the hiring for Gilead Sciences, a biotech company that at the time, fortunately, was going through some really significant growth. In 2019, I became the head of talent acquisition at Myovant Sciences, another biotech company here in South San Francisco. And as of just today, I've moved on to Ancestry. Today is actually my first day at Ancestry as the director of talent acquisition there. So I have this quote here just as a reminder, something I live by. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In an expert's mind, there's few. It just says that there's a lot of power sometimes in just not knowing better and just going out there and trying things out and putting yourself out there and, taking some risks because you will figure it out. I can guarantee you that. So I want to talk a little bit about some trends that are happening in the workplace. We are in the middle of an industrial revolution. The world is transforming at a rapid pace. It was happening before COVID, and I think now, especially coming out of COVID, we are in the middle of just a complete sea change in the way that we do work. It was trending in that direction, and now, because of being forced to be virtual in just about every respect, companies are rethinking about how they do work, how they acquire talent, how they get work done, what their employee cultures are like. So you all are, as competitive as it is out there, it's a really good time because there's just a big amount of change that's happening everywhere. And I think it lends itself to those that are open to that. Inclusion and diversity. It's something that we've seen in certainly in society, but also in organizations and companies. Companies are making decisions in a different way now. It still is it always comes down to the bottom line. But what is I think proven to be true is that being an inclusive company, being a diverse company, having a sense of purpose and social responsibility is more profitable to organizations than not. And I think you've seen probably in some recent, corporate moves as it relates to politics, that choosing an inclusive environment and having a sense of purpose and social responsibility really is even the way the corporations are going, which says a lot in its own right. Just some industries that are stronger than ever: healthcare, biotech, life sciences. That one, even through COVID, proved to be fairly recession-proof. Technology, certainly here in the Bay Area, but not just the Bay anymore. Companies are moving all over the country, but tech is a huge industry and sector for all backgrounds. Big tech companies are hiring people of all sorts to create the company culture. So it's not just necessarily, IT or software or what have you. Certainly alternative energy and education. So just some pointers on a job search. So first of all, be intentional. Really, I really suggest as you're going through your job search and the interview process and what have you, that you are thoughtful and intentional about what it is that you want and what you want to pursue. Treat looking for a job as a job. Schedule time. Have treat it as if that was your job in the moment, right? And that, because your job is going to entail different things, right? So that could be setting aside time just for applications and searching for jobs. Another block of time for networking and reaching out to folks that you all know. Another block of time for researching what it is that you want to do in different industries or different companies or what have you. As I mentioned before, networking, friendships, relationships, that will and always be the best way to find a job. As I said, earlier, I recently went through this process myself. My job came from my networks, and I knew that it would. And your networks are incredibly powerful. And I know that I don't mention LinkedIn as much here, but that is a tremendous tool to facilitate networking in various ways. I really recommend researching companies, not just the jobs that you want. So, whatever it is, the skill set that you have, don't just search that skill set, if you're a quality engineer or a software developer or what have you. Really look for the companies that you want, because more and more companies are hiring cross-functional people with different backgrounds and skills that are applicable. I heard somebody else talking in one of the earlier sessions about being agile and being able to adapt to change. You can make a good case for a lot more jobs than you probably think that you can. So find the companies that you want to work for that align with your values, that align with your sense of purpose, and see what jobs you can do within those companies, not just seeking out a specific type of job, if that makes sense. And lastly, use social media to your advantage and not to your disadvantage. So this is the time, especially for all of you entering, the professional workforce, that social media is probably going to lose some of its shine and not be as fun as it was before, but can actually be a really great tool for you to get the career and the job that you want. So start to look at those as tools and not just toys, I guess. And I can't stress enough how important it is to clean up your social media profiles and what it is that you have out there. As much as that, you can argue that should or shouldn't be the case, people will look you up, and you want to be known for what your abilities are, not not some wild night out at Riley's or wherever. So again, make it private, do what you do, but I would just really recommend starting to utilize your social media to your advantage. So the interview, I have a lot of things here on this slide, but it's important to prepare, especially for you all that you don't have as much background, and companies and people aren't going to know if you are 20 years into your career and an interviewer can just look at your resume and say, oh, you worked at, my event, you worked at Gilead, you worked here, they can already make some inferences about what you do and what your abilities are. You all don't have that luxury. However, you have a lot that you can offer in an interview, but it's going to be important to prepare, right? So research the company, really know their values, know their history, know about their leadership, look at Glassdoor. These are all things that are going to not only help you make your decision, but also give you things to talk about in an interview. Test out the logistics. We're in a virtual environment now. Maybe soon we'll be back to where we're doing in-person interviews, but for the time being, whether you're in person or you're Zoom, just kind of do a dry run before. Make sure your Zoom works. Make sure you know where they're at. Make sure you're going to be on time. You just don't want anything to distract from the task at hand, which is really showing and discussing your abilities. Prepare questions. No matter what, even if you're meeting with multiple people. I've been in part of interviews where I've been maybe the fifth or sixth interviewer, and the candidate says to me, well, everyone else has already answered all my questions. Then that's a missed opportunity, right? And if nothing else, ask about the interviewer, ask about their experience, ask about what they value about the company. Don't miss an opportunity to ask questions, because you can learn a lot, but it also says a lot about who you are as a candidate and hopefully a future employee. Research your interviewers, right? Like LinkedIn, again, on their website. The more that people love talking about themselves, the more you can throw, hey, I saw that you posted this on LinkedIn, or you wrote this article, or you were part of this, or were you part of that team that released this product, or, what have you. It pumps people's egos up, but it also shows that you did your research, right? Anticipate questions. Learn the STAR method. And these are the types of questions that are not just yes or no answers. These are, give me an example of, tell me about a time that you did. Anticipate those types of questions so you can be ready with those answers, so you're not just going off the cuff when you're being interviewed. Know your strengths and areas of development. And I have a slide on this here in a second, but having a good sense of awareness is something that is really important. Knowing what you're good at, but also knowing what you're not, but how to angle that in your interview answers is really, really important. We all have strengths. We all have areas of development. So it's not something to shy away from. It's something it's actually a real opportunity to show, a little bit of who you are. Dress professionally. Companies are changing. The style of dress internally at organizations. As I live here in San Francisco, it's very casual, more and more. But that doesn't mean that necessarily in an interview that you have that right or that opportunity yet. It's never going to hurt you to overdress a bit for the interview. I don't know that necessarily, every single company or every single industry, you need to have a full suit on and be really, that formal. But having, collared shirts, jackets, dresses or what have you, it's not going to distract from the interviewer's opinion of you. No one's going to ever mark you down for being overdressed for an interview. So you'll have an opportunity at even the coolest companies to dress really cool when you get there, but you need to get the job first. So don't shoot yourself in the foot before you even get in the door. And then lastly, prepare examples. You want to be prepared. You want to know about the things that they're going to ask you in these questions, right? You want to have situations that you can refer to when you're going through an interview. Now, again, you all don't have years and years and years of work experience where you've been in these situations, but you do have the human experience that we all have. You've been on teams, you've been in groups, You've had to confront people. You've had successes and failures. Now, they may not be the exact type of thing that you'll face in your job, but they're not all that different. If you can talk about a difficult group that you were a part of for a class, a time that you had to give a team member on a sports team some feedback about their performance, or had to have a difficult conversation, or something with your family, or what have you, those are all really relevant, because at the end of the day, what they're asking you for is how do you interact with people. So don't feel any lack of experience is not relevant, right? You are relevant, and your answers are relevant here. You just have to find a way to make sure to connect the dots for the interviewer on how that shows who you are as a potential employee. So we got the interview itself. So some of these are going to seem obvious, but I don't think it hurts, to go through them again. Be early and be prepared. Have your resume, have a notebook, have your letters of a recommendation, have a pen and paper ready to write down questions that you have, or points that the interviewer brings up. Have good posture, breathe, smile, have eye contact. Be confident. You wouldn't be in the interview if they weren't interested. People are really busy, and they don't do it. They don't interview folks just for the sake of doing it. So again, be confident in the fact that you were there for a reason, and you have a shot at getting this job. Use the interviewer's name. It seems small, but again, people consciously and subconsciously like to hear about themselves. So it just shows that you've picked up on, who they are, and that you care enough to call them by their name. Listen to the questions and make notes of that if you need to. So, and if you need to refer back to those questions throughout, go ahead and do that. So, listening is an underutilized skill in a lot of cases, especially in an interview. It's understandable. You're thinking about your answers, you think about the environment, you think about how you look, you think about trying to use this example, and you can overthink yourself out of it. So just really, once you're in the interview, just listen, take notes, and refer back. And if you need clarity, it's okay to ask for clarity, and make sure that you've answered their question. And this is a really important, this last bit here is, and this is where I think the burden is even that much heavier on folks that are earlier in their careers, is really connecting the dots on why your skills align with the job and the company. So it's going to be up to you to really sell yourself. So you're going to want, again, this is where the research of the company comes into play. This is where listening and knowing your interview comes into play. This is where listening during the interview comes into play, is for you to be the one to connect the dots, that because of my experience in this degree program, or in this class, or as part of this organization, or in this internship that I had before, plus, my desire to impact patients or customers or whatever that is. This is why I think I would be, a great employee of X company. Going for the close and really putting it out there and really summarizing it is a really effective way to leave a lasting impression with an interviewer. So find the ways to connect the dots of your background to the jobs that you want, and really put it out there when it counts. So strengths and areas of development, in one way or another, this is going to always come up in interviews, right? People are going to ask this every which way. Sometimes they're going to straight up and say, what are your greatest strengths, or what are your weaknesses? Sometimes they're going to kind of weave it into questions in a more of a sly way. But have, again, in your preparation, have a good understanding of what it is that you're good at, and really apply it to the job itself. Be specific to the job and to the interviewer itself. Be confident about your strengths, and this is something that frankly I've had to work on quite a bit through the years too. And I'm a big believer in teams, and I've always talked about, we did this and we did that and we did this and we did that. And I've received some feedback. It's like, well, what did you do? This is the time in an interview, as sometimes as uncomfortable as it can be, is to really put yourself out there and talk about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you've done. So do it in a confident way, do it in a humble way, but this is your chance to sell yourself. So don't miss that opportunity. Um, Areas of development. A little formula that I saw once that really resonated with me is what you want to do when you're talking about your weaknesses or area of development. You want to talk about the weakness, plus give some context around where or how that shows up, and what it is that you're doing to work on that area of development or weakness. This is it's an example of a quote, but sort of the answer or a version of this. Sometimes I get too caught up in the details, which really comes up when I'm really focused on a project. But I've been working with a mentor on seeing the bigger picture. So what that shows is something that your future manager can help work with you on. It shows a level of awareness around what your area of development is. It gives some context around, of what the situation, when that actually tends to really show itself. And most importantly, what it is that you're doing to work on that. And that is a great vehicle to shift from talking about a weakness or an area of development into a strength, right? If you do your job right, or if you do it well in an interview, when you're talking about weaknesses, they can end up being strengths. Wrapped up in a weaknesses costume. Self-awareness is really an attractive attribute in a candidate. Having a good sense of what you're good at and what you're not good at is something that hiring managers and leaders really, really value, more so than ever today. Having a good sense of who you are, good, bad, and in between. For a good manager, that's somebody that they're going to want to hire, that they're going to want to work with. Some questions to ask. Again, try to learn about them. What brought you to the company? What keeps you there? Tell me about the opportunities for growth and development. Can you describe what kind of manager you are, right? This is your chance to interview the interviewer, right? What does success look like in this job? Not only is this an opportunity for you to learn, but it's also an opportunity for you to show that you are curious, that you care, that you're interested, and that you've prepared, and that you're really making a decision on this job too. So follow up. Don't miss an opportunity to send a thank you note or an email at the absolute least. Connect it to something that came up in the interview, in your thank you note, to say, something along the lines of, I want to thank you for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I've thought more about when we talked about, high intensity situations, and I want to provide another example or something like that. So, connect the dots, not just a general thank you, but something that is relevant to the actual interview or conversation that you had. Offer any references, letters of recommendation, check in regularly, and be ready to decide when the offer comes.